So now I'm going to shift to the east coast of Africa and what's known as the Swahili city-states. And before we dig too deep, the term Swahili refers to this mixing of Bantu and Arabic languages. And so the Bantu is kind of the native language in many parts of sub-Saharan Africa. It's going to mix with the Arabic languages to form Swahili. And so, unlike West Africa, where we saw larger kingdoms develop like Ghana and Mali, the east coast of Africa is going to be dominated typically by city-states. And each city-state had its own separate government. Most of those were ruled by kings. But kind of like West Africa, they too are going to grow wealthy by taxing trade. And they're going to control trade from the interior parts of Africa to the coast, where we're going to see things like ivory and gold and slaves and spices brought from the interior parts of Africa to these city-states. And once they were brought to those city-states, they were exchanged for products from the Indian Ocean basin. So finished products, textiles, dyes, and other luxury goods from throughout the Indian Ocean basin. Like West Africa, these city-states also are going to grow wealthier throughout this era. For example, at the beginning of this era, most of the buildings and residences were still made out of mud, bricks. Well, by the end of this era, we start to see stone complexes, stone buildings produced. And that's just a testament to the growing wealth that existed in these city-states. One of the wealthier and busiest of these city-states in East Africa was Kilwa. It was a large city-state. It included many stone buildings and mosques and schools. They even issued a common currency. They had copper coins that they issued. And they're going to export tons of gold from the interior parts of Africa to the Muslim world. And they're going to remain a dominant city-state in East Africa until the early 16th century, when the Portuguese arrive and sack the city-state. When we look at the role of Islam in East Africa, it shares a lot of similarities to the role of Islam in West Africa. First off, it was introduced mostly through merchants. Islamic merchants brought the faith with them as they traded. And so it was mostly your upper elites and your wealthy merchants who were most likely to convert to Islam. And the main reasons they converted was, again, it gave them a better relationship with these Muslim merchants they were trading with. And rulers would convert because A, it helped kind of solidify their power, and B, it gave them a powerful ally in the Islamic world. All right, shifting to South Africa now, in Zimbabwe. First off, the geography here is a bit different. It's a wooded area with also some open grass savannas, and it's also an area that's rich in minerals, especially copper and gold. And it was an area that was especially good for grazing lands. And so we're going to see many Bantu herders make their way to this region and set up societies here. And so the largest of these is going to be Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is going to become a powerful kingdom in Central Africa beginning in the 13th century or so. And kind of like what we saw on the East Coast, where over time the residences became wealthier, and we see that in the architecture. We're going to see the same thing here in Zimbabwe. Early residences were mostly built out of wood, and by the 9th century or so, they start to build those out of stone. And in fact, the term Zimbabwe refers to these residences, not the people themselves. And so the Great Zimbabwe was a huge stone complex that was built in the 12th century. Technically, it was a chief's house, and it was built out of stone. And at its high point, Zimbabwe had between 15 and 20,000 residences. Even though they weren't directly connected to the East Coast, they still benefited from trade. They're going to help organize the flow of trade from the interior parts of Africa to the East Coast. And so they're going to help flow gold and ivory and slaves to the Swahili coast. They also counted wealth in cattle as well, and slavery was common as well. The more slaves you had, the more land you could cultivate. The more cattle you had, the more wealth you had. And so they counted wealth in cattle and slaves as well. And they're going to continue to trade and benefit from the Muslim slave trade on that east coast of Africa.